Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the June 25th meeting of the Village of Pinehurst Historic Preservation Commission. The purpose of the commission is to approve certificates of appropriateness for new construction or major work, and to do so by conducting hearings and making findings of fact when applications come before us. Our mission is to take no action except to preserve and approve that which is congruous with the special character of the Village of Pinehurst Historic District. I'm Eric Von Salzen, Chairman. I'm going to ask each of the members, starting at my far left, to identify themselves.
John Taylor.
Vincent. Barry Lurch.
Also present are Peter Hughes, Senior Planner, and Kelly Brown, Planning and Administrative Assistant. Not only have a quorum, we have 100% participation, and so we can proceed. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, so anyone desiring to testify must be sworn in, and we are required to consider only facts presented in this hearing. Proceedings are video recorded. The first order of business is to review, comment on, and approve the minutes of our last meeting held on May 28th of this year.
Move to approve. Second.
Any comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The public hearing is open. With respect to all of the cases on our agenda today, I request the commissioners to disclose any site visits or ex parte communications.
Start with me.
Yes.
Okay. I have visited all 4 of the sites and have no ex parte communications.
I too have visited all 4 and no ex parte communication.
I visited all 4. In the case of Medlin Road, the owners happened to be there. We exchanged pleasantries, but nothing of substance, no other ex parte communications.
I visited all the sites and had no ex parte communications.
And I visited all sites and had no ex parte communications.
I visited all sites, no ex parte communication.
I visited all sites and no ex parte communication.
All right, Peter, swear you in. Do you affirm that the testimony you shall give to the commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right. Let's start with the first case. Any changes in order, Peter? Okay. So Barrett Road is the first case.
All right, I'll go ahead and start.
Yes.
All right. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider a request within the Pinehurst Historic District for the construction of an in-ground swimming pool at 25 Barrett Road. The property can be further identified in the Moore County Tax Registry by Moore County PIN number 855-212-873-428. The property owners are Jessica and David Neely, and the applicant is Jessica Neely. Something new with all of our presentations, I'm taking a picture of all the front of the houses so we kind of get a frame of reference for what we're looking at. In this case, it's a pool, so not necessarily the greatest example, but in the future, just be mindful that you'll be seeing this more often in our presentations. Some background on the property. There have been no previous major COAs issued on the property. There has been 3 minor COAs. There was a white picket fence in 2007, addition of a pergola in 2007, and the removal and addition of new pathways in 2007 for 25 Barrett Road. The primary structure is not considered contributing according to the National Historic Landmark Survey, and some of the adjacent properties are, which we have detailed in the tables that were included in your report. Most of the houses are fairly new. 20 Caldy, which is the rear yard neighbor, was constructed in 1927 and is a contributing structure. And then 40 Caldy is also a contributing structure that was built in 1923. This is a map of the notification area for 25 Bartlett Road. As you can see, we notified 11 properties that were adjacent. The applicant is requesting to construct an in-ground swimming pool. The reason why we're hearing this case is because according to the Historic District guidelines, in-ground swimming pools are for HPC approval. The applicant submitted a site plan. The site plan does meet our zoning requirements. It is set back 20 feet away from the roadway. Anything that's adjacent to the roadway that's an accessory structure has to be set back that far. The pool is proposed to be roughly 30 feet by, it looks like 16, including the proposed apron. This is a site photo submitted by the applicant. It was included in your additional material that was placed on your table. This is the proposed location, so you guys have a visual reference of what it looks like now. And then the applicant also submitted this example of what they intend it to look like afterwards. So as you can see, the description there says outdoor oasis, and I would agree that that definitely looks like an outdoor oasis. Staff, ironically enough, took a very similar photo, almost the exact same photo. And that's what it looks when you're looking out towards that right-of-way / alley that's supposed to be Shaw Road, but it's not paved. This is what it looks like looking at the property. One thing to point out on this first photo is how heavily screened it is from the road. In a sense, you would never see this in-ground pool from the roadway because of this heavy screening along that rear. The applicant is proposing concrete cement for the new pathways associated with the pool. So they did submit building material, but obviously you can't bring in a piece of concrete, so concrete, we all know what that looks like. At this time, staff would like to submit the following into the record: the staff report, the presentation, the application, the applicant's material, and the applicant's late addition of material, the photos, site plans, and findings of fact. With that, staff concludes their presentation and is happy to answer any questions.
Any questions at this time from members of the commission? Thank you.
I have none.
None.
Thank you. And who is here to represent the,
Hi, my name is Jessica Neely. I apologize, my husband couldn't join us. He's deploying soon, so he's in isolation. So just got me today. But yeah, we would hope that.
Excuse me, before you start testifying, Eric, can you swear her in, please?
Oh, sorry.
do you affirm that the testimony you shall give to the commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Is there anyone else here who is intending to speak with respect to this application? Swear you in now if you are. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm sorry. Ms. Neely, please.
Can you speak into the mic, please, Eric?
Oh,
We're
sorry.
having a hard time picking up on the recording. And
Sorry, I'm not familiar with all this.
Oh, that's okay. Most people aren't. You're fine.
All right, Mrs. Neely, would you go ahead and say what you want to say about this proposed swimming pool?
I just think it would be a great improvement to the property and a wonderful thing for our family. So we are hoping that we can get it approved.
And the information that's been submitted to us with respect to this proposal and with respect to your property, is that all correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, sir, it is.
Do any of the members of the commission have any questions?
Not I.
Go ahead.
Oh, it says Shaw Road, but it's really, that's a right-of-way, right?
It's just a gravel road behind our
Right.
house, and we have one neighbor behind us. And so it's not a paved road or anything. And the neighbor behind us is excited for a pool party. She's quite supportive of the project, which is really nice.
Any other questions?
I've got one quick one. The concrete you're putting in is going to be left natural color gray? Or is
No,
it-
it'll be, it's to match what we currently have, which is kind of like a slightly, it's like stamped and has crisscross on it.
Okay.
So it's to keep the same aesthetic, and it's, I don't know if you can't really see in the pictures, but it's just like a slightly colored stamped concrete.
Okay, it wasn't clear on.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the
no,
drawing.
not just like plain gray, but yeah,
Okay.
we want to have it kind of like in the picture too of the example, just the
Okay.
nice looking.
Thank you for the information, and thank your husband for his service, too.
Thank you, I will.
A couple of minor questions. One tree, I understand, has to be removed to build this swimming pool. Is it the tree in the picture?
No, it's just behind. I tried to take a picture where you could kind of see it. It's covered in ivy right now, so you can see it. And you see where it's all sandy is because the tree covers the light, so we
okay.
can't even grow grass there. So it would just definitely make the property look a lot nicer if we could remove it.
The staff was unable to determine whether the tree to be removed is greater than 12 inches in diameter at breast height. Do you have an opinion on that subject?
I don't know, but we did have an arborist come out, and he said that it's not an old tree, and he said it shouldn't be an issue because it's not something that should be preserved, and that it is covered in ivy as well, so they need to remove that. And but he said he didn't see it as being an issue of.
I have no other questions.
I have no further questions.
I'll take it.
Barry, would you like, well, before we entertain a motion, let me ask if there's any discussion. Hearing none. Terry, would you like to make a motion?
On due consideration of the application package submitted and the testimony given, the Historic Preservation Commission concludes the following: that the applicant has satisfied the burden of persuasion and the project as proposed, subject to any conditions imposed by the commission, which at this time are none, is congruous with the Pinehurst Historic District and consistent with the Historic District guidelines.
Is there a second? Motion has been made by Terry Lurtz and seconded by John Taylor. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. I say aye. The motion passes by a vote of 7-0. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
You have your
There's
certificate of
3 little kids that
appropriateness.
are going to be super, super happy, so we really appreciate your time. Thank you.
They got a fun playhouse in the front, so
Yeah.
it's,
Did you drive that alley?
yeah, it looks like a happy place.
Yeah.
Fun in the back, fun in the front.
Did you drive the alley? I couldn't believe it was
Bye.
an extension of Shaw.
I'd never been there until.
No, I've never needed. Wasn't sure I wasn't trespassing.
I know,
But
'cause it
then I
kept
saw
saying
garbage
private
cans. I
property,
said,
private-
well,
I
it's
know.
got to be public if there's garbage cans there.
Yeah.
All right, Peter, we ready for 15 Midland Road?
Yes, sir, we are.
All right, and you are Ms. Bailey, is that correct?
No, I'm Lynn Cribbs with Cribbs Construction.
Oh, okay. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you affirm that the testimony you shall give to the commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Is there anyone else present who intends to speak in connection with this application? Hearing none. Peter, would you go ahead and present the case?
Yes, sir. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider a request within the Pinehurst Historic District for the construction of a new accessory structure and removal of an existing accessory structure at 15 Medlin Road. The property can be further identified in Moore County Tax Registry by Moore County PIN number 856-205-180-599. The property owners are Philip and Leslie Bailey. The applicant will be Cribbs Construction. This is a picture of the front of the house of 15 Midland Road. The background on this property is there's no previous COAs that have been issued or requested for 15 Midland Road. The Historic District was only established in 2006, so the HPC would not have had the opportunity necessarily to review some of those additions. The primary structure at 15 Midland Road is not listed within the Historic District landmark. None of the adjacent properties within the public hearing notification are listed as contributing structures either. This is the property notification map. We notified 7 properties for this application. The applicant is making 2 requests. One of the requests you have to make a decision on before you make a decision on the second request. The first request is the removal of the existing accessory structure, and the second request is the construction of a new accessory structure. The request to remove the existing structure must be ruled on separately. The existing structure is not zoning compliant. It's what we call an existing nonconformity because it's located about 2 feet off property line. By removing that, we would be removing a nonconformity, and the proposed new structure would meet zoning setback requirements. The existing structure does not have any character, architectural character that's indicative of the historic district. It's a glorified shed, so it's not in risk of being torn down for a historic preservation reasons. So before we move on to the next part, would you guys like to deliberate and hear from the applicant on the removal of the existing shed?
Let me ask Ms. Cribbs, if for some reason we were to deny the application to build the new shed, would the owners still want the old shed removed?
No, they did not convey that to me. So she's an artist, so she's trying to build a little studio in the backyard, and the existing shed, it's not very conducive to painting artwork with no windows or anything in there. So they might want to keep it for storage. I know the new shed will be kind of her studio and storage.
Why don't we wait until we've heard the whole
Okay.
case, and then we'll vote, as Peter indicated, in
I've got a
order.
question then to follow up on yours, and I guess the question is directed to you. There are two separate decisions. One, and whether the owner goes through with one of them or not is still, we aren't forcing them. So if
Correct.
we give them permission to take this down and they choose not to take it down, I don't think there's any violation of statute code or anything else that I'm aware of. So I'm not sure there's really any connectivity between the two of them. That's my.
I agree with you, legally, there's not, but in the practical world, I think we'd like to know, before we vote on the first issue, what we need to know about the second issue. At least that would be my recommendation. If anybody disagrees, we can proceed differently.
Is there any way to make the second one contingent on the first one?
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just found out the homeowners are here. I have not seen them in
Oh.
person, and they have masks on, so they can answer that question
Oh,
about.
there we go.
Before they answer that question, they need to be sworn in for the record. So if one of the Baileys would like to come to the mic. Sorry, Mrs. Cribbs, I didn't realize you'd never met them in person.
Only through email.
She's covering from her much lesser half, Mr. Cribbs.
The she shed issue is before us. Would you, Ms. Bailey, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you affirm that the testimony you shall give to this commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Just as a matter of information, and I think we may very well agree that it's not dispositive, in the event that we were not to grant your COA with respect to the new shed, what would you like to do with the old shed?
We do have plans to take the old shed down. There are parts you can maybe see in the front left corner. It is deteriorating. Water has gotten in there. On the back side, which I don't think we have a picture of, up in the upper right corner, it's moldy. So it's not really in any condition to keep or to renovate or to use for anything other than we've got the Christmas tree in there and the lawnmower.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of this witness? Under the circumstances, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the removal of the old shed.
So moved?
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Having all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the COA with respect to the removal of the old shed has been approved. Shall we now proceed to the case with respect to the
Yes, sir.
construction of the new shed?
The proposed new accessory structure will be zoning compliant. It'll be located approximately 11 to 12 feet off property line. The applicant was unable to secure a survey. Right now, the surveyors are being overworked. It's something that in the planning office, we're coming into contact with a lot, where surveys aren't being able to be provided in the normal time span. So they did provide their own sketch, and I've gone and done a site visit, and currently the width of the shed that's there is about 8 feet, and it's currently 2 feet off property line. So it would be, if they're locating it to the right to the left, if you're looking at the shed, it would be outside that 10 feet requirement. So they would be zoning compliant based on their hand-drawn sketch. They are proposing an elevation here. This is they got these elevations from online and purchased them, but they've made some modifications that are more compliant with the character of the historic district. They're going to do hardy lap siding versus that vertical board and batten that you see. They're going to do a 15-pane fixed window on the front doors there, and there won't be a transom window. The rear is going to have a 2-pane fixed glass door. We have examples of those later in the presentation. And then there was a error in the elevations that was pointed out to me, and I sent out an email to all of you reflective of that, which is that the right elevation on the plans was annotated twice. This is the corrected version of it. This is in fact the left elevation with the windows facing away from the neighbor's fence. And then this would be the correct right elevation. And once again, this is all going to be hardy lap siding, which is more evident of our cottage architecture within the historic district. They filled out the online application, which is why it looks different than other things, and we'll be transitioning to that. So they've done their material list. They're using hardy lap siding. They're doing a 30 architectural asphalt shingle. Asphalt shingles are kind of an industry standard. MiraTech is a engineered product that they're using for trim. It basically lasts longer, and because it's trim material, it's exposed to the weather and elements longer. They are proposing vinyl for the windows. Vinyl is not a recommended or an appropriate material in the historic district, but the commission may approve things that are not necessarily consistent with the guidelines. And then staff would like to enter the staff report, the presentation, application, applicant's material, and photos and site plans into the record.
Thank you. Ms. Cribbs, what do you have to add to the statements that have just been made?
I don't have anything to add unless you have any questions.
Right. Do any of the commissioners have questions of either of the witnesses?
I just have a question about the height. It's lower than the primary structure, right? Are there exact heights provided at all? Or can that be submitted later?
On the application, I think.
You guys can make that a condition that they submit elevations that show the height of the primary structure and the height of the accessory structure to prove that the primary structure is in fact at a larger scale than the accessory structure.
For the record, I suppose it might be.
The roof is different. It's not yeah,
It's a different
Gonna be-
slope from the house.
a lot shorter.
She's saying
than
it's
the
going to be a
house.
less of a pitch than what's proposed, is
Oh,
what I'm
okay.
getting from her description.
Oh, okay.
I do have the plan, just me.
But we don't know what the peak height is. Is that true?
We do not based on what's been submitted, but I think they may have new plans or updated plans, maybe. Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
I note that vinyl windows are not listed as appropriate in our guidelines. Ms. Cribbs, would you provide us with the rationale for using vinyl on the windows?
Just, it's less maintenance and more cost-effective for an outbuilding.
And in your view, would the appearance of the vinyl windows on this shed be consistent with the appearance of the Park District? Questions, is anyone else?
So the windows in the sheds are going to be 4/4?
Just like the picture, yes, sir.
Windows in the home or what?
6/6.
6/6? Okay.
But I don't think the windows are visible from the street.
Yeah, the windows would be facing in towards the lot, so you wouldn't be able to see them from the street. And then they have that 15-pane door, which is also matching their 15-pane door at the front of the home. So they will be kind of matching that style from what's visible from the street.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, the chair will entertain a motion with respect to this application. Thank you, John.
Upon due consideration of the application package submitted and the testimony given, the Historic Preservation Commission concludes the following: that the applicant has satisfied the burden of persuasion and the project as proposed, subject only to the condition that a vertical elevation be provided to staff, is congruous with the Pinehurst Historic District and consistent with historic district guidelines.
Excuse me, John.
Something about vinyl windows in
Yeah,
it.
shouldn't it be the second motion because they're doing vinyl windows and vinyl is not appropriate material? I apologize for interjecting.
Is there a survey too has to be submitted or no?
That was a condition recommended by staff. That condition can be placed on there if you guys have doubt, but that would be required at the building phase regardless of the condition. So it's kind of a condition you can put on there just to feel safer, but it would be something that would be met regardless. It's
The
something that's required.
PDO would require that,
Yeah.
require that.
So it's a condition that just would give you comfort if that's what you needed to approve.
I would feel comfortable, John, if your motion were to be in the second form, since we have,
Agree. Right.
respect solely to
Exactly.
the vinyl windows.
You can always discuss instead of making a new motion, you can always just amend the previous motion.
Is not the language that while it is not appropriate, the commission has the authority to approve it?
Yes, we have, we have the right to approve it, but we should acknowledge it in the form of the motion.
Fine, I amend my motion. Upon due consideration of the application package submitted and the testimony given, the Historic Preservation Commission concludes the following: that the project as proposed is not in conformity with the guidelines. Nevertheless, the applicant has satisfied the burden of persuasion, and the project, subject to the condition of both submission of vertical elevation and survey of the property, is deemed congruous with the Pinehurst Historic District.
Second.
Just for clarification, the one respect in which it's not in conformity is the vinyl windows.
Yes.
Like that in the written report. Any discussion? Therefore, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Much.
Thank you. You have your certificate of appropriateness.
You got to talk to the planning people.
That's absolutely correct.
We considered once upon a time in our original house, we had a garage that was situated exactly the way this is. It's 2 feet off off the side property line. Had the feature when it was built of having a sliding back door because cars did not have reverse gears. So to put the car in the garage, you had to go around to the back in the alley and drive in. And we thought it would be neat. The
Pretty good at that.
Configuration, we'll tear it down, we'll rebuild it exactly the way it looks now on site, and they said, sorry, you can't do that.
Have a
Would've
new
looked
set of
better, would've been
skills.
original, but-
Good afternoon.
All right, this is 35 Orange Road. Peter, would you like to present the report?
Yes, sir. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider a request within the Pinehurst Historic District for a modification to the front elevation roof line at 35 Orange Road. The property can be further identified in the Moore County Tax Registry by Moore County PIN number 856-209-061-956. The property owners are Thomas and Maureen O'Connor, and the applicant will be Thomas O'Connor. This is a photo of the front of the house. We'll see more of them through the applicant's material as well. Some background on the property: 35 Orange has received one previous major COA. In 2007, a major COA was issued for the demolition of an accessory dwelling and a garage. The garage was not demolished because the applicant saw potential in the future restoration of that garage. So the garage is still standing on property today. 35 Orange has also received 2 minor COAs, the relocation of utilities and the addition of a new 3.5-foot white picket fence in 2007. And recently, through me, he got a minor CO for re-shingling the roof, repainting, restoration of the existing windows, and an addition of new gutters if necessary. According to the National Historic Landmark Survey, the primary structure at 35 Orange was constructed in 1916 and is listed as a contributing building. Many of the adjacent properties within the public hearing notification are also listed as contributing structures. 45 Orange, 40 Orange are both listed as contributing structure. 45 Orange was the Pinecrest Lodge at one point, and then we have the Afterglow at 40 Orange, which is a 1.5-story framed cottage with wide German siding. 155 Cherokee, in 1976, the Radcliffe was torn down and thereafter a large apartment or condominium building. This is not a contributing structure, but it's one of the few condos in the Pinehurst Historic District. In the notification, this is a picture of the notification map. We notified 6 properties of adjacent property owners. This request is before the commission because the applicant is proposing to alter the existing roof line, and roof line changes are considered a major work. I'd like to emphasize while this proposed change is minor in scale, there was not flexibility within the guidelines that allowed staff to bring it as a minor. We had to bring it as a major. The applicant is proposing to modify the left side of the roof on the front elevation by raising the roof approximately 6 inches, and he'll have to angle the roof a little bit to match what's there by about, I think, 4 degrees is what's mentioned in his application material. The effect of this modification is level and symmetric roof line, or as the applicant stated, a seamless roof line. The applicant submitted a survey of the property. It is located here to the right of Lot 1308. Here's a zoomed-in version showing it, and even in this, you can kind of see where the roof line is jagged on that left side of the elevation there. The applicant submitted this photo identifying the area that will be raised 6 inches. And this is a close-up with some documentation of what's going to happen there. The vertical height difference is 6 inches. He's going to raise it that and match the angle of the current roof so that we have that seamless roof line. Staff went out and took a few photos because we needed some color photos. This is a look from the front. This is looking like down the line, so you can still see how there's that jagged roof line. And then here again, I'm taking another photo to see that 6-inch raise that will be approved pending your decision. The applicant submitted a building material list. I modified it with my own signature there with a matching existing. He forgot to include that, but I coordinated with him that he's going to match existing like he's doing the rest of his projects. At this time, staff would like to enter into the record the staff report, presentation, application, applicant's material, photos, site plans, and findings of fact.
So ordered. Mr. O'Connor, may I swear you in, please? Raise your right hand. Do you affirm that the testimony you shall give to the commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. And state your name for the record, please.
Thomas O'Connor.
You've heard what Mr. Hughes has said. As far as it goes, is that accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Do you have anything to add?
No, but
Mr. O'Connor, if you could lean into the mic because we're recording.
just that this is the beginning of a complete, well overdue restoration on this house. But I had attempted to make a plan where the front elevation reflected the property as it was originally built in 1916, but I can't do that without actually changing the sheds on the right and the left, so I'm just going to start with the roof line just as more of a clean visual look. Plus with the jagged roof lines, it also means jagged gutters, and we have a big water problem, not the least of which is affected by the Holly Inn parking lot, so this is also part of a plan to sort of move water away from the house.
Thank you. I only have one question, I think, and that is, with respect to the right side of the roof line, after this work is done, will there be any change with respect to that part of the roof line?
Yeah.
Any questions from members of the commission? Yes, sir.
And also to re-roof the whole front?
Excuse me,
roof line?
Mr. Herring, could you speak into the
Oh,
microphone?
sorry. Do you also intend to re-roof the whole front roof line so the shingles match?
Yes, actually, we're going to, pending an approval, we're going to redo the entire roof. I just replace rotted wood, felt, and the 45-degree gable and then all the way around.
The whole should match.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you.
Chair will entertain a motion.
Okay. I'll make the motion. Under the due consideration of the application package submitted and the testimony given, the Historic Preservation Commission concludes the following: that the applicant has satisfied the burden of persuasion and the project is proposed subject to any conditions imposed, which are none by the commission, is congruous with the Pinehurst Historical District and consistent with the Historical District guidelines.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. The motion is passed, 7-0. You have your certificate of appropriateness.
Just a curiosity question. Is that in addition to the house? Is that why it's that way?
The house was originally a square, 20 by 20 with a 45-degree roof, and then the sheds were added on over the years, so it was actually a T. Backs got built on.
I just was curious.
No, so, and thank you for this initial action. Well, I'll be back in front of you in another month or so when we propose the rest of the work.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
If it's as well presented as this application was, you should have no trouble.
Wondering, after reading the application, why they would do this, and I suspected maybe there was a phase 2, but
Yeah.
I tried to encourage him to submit his one application, but it was his choice.
That's right.
I encouraged, but
More revenue for the village, so.
I'm not complaining. Keeps me employed, right?
Peter, will you present the report on 120 Savile Row?
All right, before I start, I made some errors in the staff report. I mislabeled the address of Seville Road. I called it 120 Linden Road when it should have been 120 Seville Road a couple times throughout the staff report. I provided you guys a revised one, and for the record, we'll have that reflected so that way we have an updated and accurate staff report.
Oh, Savile. Savile.
It's Saville.
If you're dealing with the Brits,
Yeah.
Savile.
Hey, I'm always ready to be educated and learn something every day.
We
So.
have an expert
No, I got
in the
corrected by
farm,
my wife.
on this commission.
All right. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider a request within the Pinehurst Historic District for construction of a new single-family residence at 120 Seville Road. The property can be further identified in the Moore County Tax Registry by Moore County PIN number 855-200-369-009. The property owners are Sean and Janet Suggs, and the applicant will be Bartlett Construction. Right now, this is a vacant lot, so this is your front elevation of what the existing conditions of the lot are. It's really great architecture. There is no previous COA applications, as you can imagine. It's a vacant lot. 120 Seville Road is not listed as a National Historic Landmark. It is going to be a brand-new house. If approved, it would be considered not a contributing structure, and none of the adjacent properties within the public hearing notification area are listed as contributing structures. The majority of the adjacent property owners were all Savile Row addresses, except for 11 Varden Road, which happens not to be within the historic district. But we went ahead and notified them because they're an adjacent property. We notified 6 properties. This request is before the commission because all new single-family and all new construction is considered major work, and all major work must be approved by the commission. The applicant is proposing the construction of a new single-family home that is reminiscent of craftsman and cottage architecture elements. The applicant has submitted a surveyed site plan that meets all zoning. It has submitted this is a close-up version because I thought, I can't read that, so maybe they can't either. The closest front property line there is 57 feet, the side is 20 feet, and then they have a whopping 117 and a half feet from the rear property line. So it is a big house that's being proposed, but it's not overpowering the lot, given how much setbacks they're meeting there. They did submit a landscaping plan, and from a zoning perspective, they're over-qualified on this one. They're over-planting, which is great. We want to see that. So they did a great job with their landscaping plan. They did submit elevations, and it may have been a little confusing initially because they are saying brick veneer, but we looked like it looked maybe lap siding. But I wanted to point that out. The siding will be brick veneer for the majority of the house. The entrance will feature a stucco material, and then they're going to show you windows with no panes apparently. So we're all single pane windows, and some windows will have shutters and some will not. And the shutters of the arched windows will have arched shutters. Here's the right elevation. Once again, they're going to be brick veneer, and then you're going to see a little bit of stucco from that front elevation creeping in. And then here's the left elevation. This is the left elevation of the garage. The garages will be visible from the street, but they're not front-facing, so that's appropriate within the historic district according to the guidelines. It is 4 garages, I imagine, and it does say that one of those is for a golf cart, and it will be brick veneer on this side as well. This is the rear view, and it will be a screened-in porch there for a nice screened-in porch. And then they presented materials, and I asked for all the materials to be submitted digitally because of COVID-19. Handling materials just didn't seem like the right idea. So we have sample materials in the form of digital pictures. We have a brick veneer sample. We have a pewter color roofing sample. And then the roofing metal is teak brown. Brown is an acceptable color for roofing metal. It's going to be featured on the front of the house. And then that stucking material is going to be it's like a beigeish gray to me. It's called mega grayish, so maybe they're combining grayish and beige into the name. We have soffit colors that are MiraTek, or the product is MiraTek. MiraTek, once again, is that engineered product. It's very limited amount of that product being used throughout the structure. Engineered products are allowed within the historic district. It's for maintenance and just maintaining that moisture level within those corner areas of the home. The shutters are proposed to be vinyl. There is some confusion on the applications within Exhibit A and Exhibit H that was pointed out to me by a commissioner. Exhibit A says it's going to be vinyl, Exhibit H says it's going to be wood. So just FYI on that. And then we're showing that the windows will be a white casement style, and that the front door will be mahogany. And the garage door will be a standard garage panel. In the elevations, it does say that the owners will be deciding on the final selection. That's something that can be handled at a minor COA level or a simple change. Garage door styles are not really a big concern. Anything that they choose, given the rest of this house's makeup, would be congruous most likely. But that would be something communicated between me and the applicant. This is the applications from Exhibit H. As you can see, it shows the shutters being wood. On Exhibit A, it will be showing shutters being vinyl. The reason why I included this one because they included color on this one. I just thought it was more helpful to see what color choices they're making there for the record. At this time, the staff would like to submit the following into the record: staff report, presentation, application, applicant's material, the photo and site plans, and the findings of fact.
Thank you, so ordered. And you are the representative of the applicant. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Kevin Bartlett, the builder.
Bartlett, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you affirm that the testimony you shall give to the commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You've heard the report that Mr. Hughes has given. Is that correct and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief? And would you like to add anything?
Excuse me, Mr. Bartlett, can you speak up or move closer to the microphone, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Is there anything you would like to add?
The owners are excited for us to start construction. They're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to working with them and you guys. So.
What's the square footage?
On the house?
I didn't see that on the application.
It's on the site plan. It's 5,204 square feet. It's in the bottom left corner.
Bottom left of Exhibit B.
5,800, I saw.
Are
It's
you going, are you
5,000.
talking about heated under roof? What?
I'm just talking about what the site plan says for the house square footage. I'm assuming that's impervious.
Or, yeah, it is.
Yeah, so that's not necessarily livable or habitable space. That's just the whole footprint of the building.
The report raised an issue as to what the shutters are going to be made of.
There it is.
Well, we would ask for vinyl for maintenance issues.
Okay.
You know, just long-term, but, you know,
As you know, that's not one of our pre-approved materials, but we've approved it a number of times. Would you state the rationale for preferring vinyl over one of our approved materials?
long-term maintenance.
Appearance is satisfactory, I take it?
So they will appear to be wood, is that correct?
Yes,
From a
they would be,
distance?
they would, yeah, yeah. You wouldn't know they were vinyl unless you touched them.
I have a concern relative to the placement of the driveway and the access to the garage, and maybe just the whole placement of the property. It looks like the majority of trees that are going to be removed are in the driveway. Is there some consideration to repositioning?
I mean, that wasn't brought up in my conversations with the owners. Unfortunately, we can't pick where the trees are, and they did want the garage on so pulling into that structure, they don't want to see the garage first. They want to see the house first, garage on the backside.
Understand.
Unfortunately,
So if you flipped it, it wouldn't fit
If you
that.
flipped it, you would see garage pulling up. You would say
You
trees.
would, you're
but
right,
you would-
okay.
Big garage sticking out, so.
So it's a balance of the considerations, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And what size are those trees? I mean, are they major trees or?
There's just there's a cluster of trees in there. I mean,
There are some hardwoods there, Tom. I mean,
Oh,
given
I-
this.
Yeah, I saw them.
yeah.
I just was wondering, based on, is it any of the big oaks or something like that that are in there? It appears not to be by there, and from what I recall and looking at it, I didn't notice any, but that was my question. Is there any?
But I agree with your comment. Otherwise, if you flipped it, you got the garage that you're going to see coming in Savile Road.
most times we try to emphasize, the primary traffic pattern, you want to look at the best view.
That's clear. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple. The report, starting on page 9, indicates there are some proposed materials that are not compliant with our guidelines. I think we've discussed some of them. Just want to discuss the rest. Myratech trim boards are an engineered wood product, which we have not listed as an appropriate or inappropriate material. Would you provide the rationale for using that material?
So it's a substitute that we use all the time now. It comes in 16-foot lengths, so you have minimum joints for expansion and contraction. It has a wood grain finish, so it looks just like wood, and has a 50-year warranty. So if it's installed correctly, I mean, it's there for quite some time.
And
And what was the material?
It's Myratech is the name of it's a composite.
Composite material?
Yeah, it's a composite, sure.
And what's the proposed color for the trim? It's not indicated in the report.
Soften and trim, Myratech.
It's a crisp and linen.
Crisp linen?
Crisp linen,
Yes.
okay, thank you. Let's see. All right, and we have vinyl windows and shutters. Again, not a pre-approved material for us, but we have the ability to approve it. Could you explain why vinyl should be approved for that purpose?
So window-wise, it is basically the maintenance. I just want to point out that we did construct a house at 105 Seville Row, and we did put vinyls in that house for the windows, and we got the CO on that about a year ago. Shutters is a maintenance, it's just, they want to put them up and not have to redo them every, 3 or 4 years with urethane.
I have one final question. Our guidelines do not recommend highly pitched roofs or houses with overly decorative, complex roof lines, and I'm referring to pages 38 and 39 of our guidelines. Would you provide the rationale for why, and just to put a pin in this, what the guidelines say is that a well-proportioned roof design with simple lines is to be preferred, and that a house with overly decorative, complex roof lines is not recommended.
I'd add that the guidelines show a depiction of what is preferred and what is not.
Correct.
And the one proposed here kind of looks like the one that's
Does.
recommended, so.
It does.
Well, and again, we got to go back and take a look at the guidelines. The issue is the must are the ones that we make the decision on, the preferred, the kind of would like to sees, et cetera, are closer to recommendations, if I'm correct. That was my recollection.
You are correct, but I would like the witness to provide his rationale for why the roof line chosen for this building is as it is.
So, two points. First point is, your main roof line has, so you got 10-foot ceiling height throughout the structure. Well, their main roof line has a 14-foot structure. So when you walk into the home, it's just higher ceilings. Second point is, you know, it's very subjective between, you know, designer and client and trying to conform with you guys as the historic. I can say that they spent 8 months working on this design, you know, working out the details. Unfortunately, the roof line kind of lines up with the floor plan and the floor plan that they kind of fell in love with. So, other than it is really subjective in interpretation on.
I'm going to say it's very, very subjective. What you might consider.
Correct.
Or any of us might consider overly done, somebody else here might not.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah.
Any further questions of the witness? Yes.
About the shutters, it appears the shutters, the guidelines talk about shutters should be, not must be, but should be half the width of the window. Would there be any way you could adjust the size of the shutters to meet that
As
suggestion?
far as width,
Width.
yes, you can get wider shutters. Yes, you can. We could look into that, yes.
But can I just ask, just being new on this, though, what does congruous mean, though? Congruous with home plan or congruous with a district? And so, yeah, so I know in Peter's reports, he said there are comparable roof lines, but where? I mean, I just don't know where I've seen these kind of roof lines in the district. Maybe they exist, but I just.
Very similar looking houses. There's one under construction now in the corner of McCaskill and Magnolia, right down here. Very French looking themed house. There's another
You
one.
mean McCaskill and Graham?
McCaskill and Graham, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And you can see the sharpness and the pitch of the roof. And then there's another very attractive house in Mackenzie with, it's either a wood folk garage or a wood carriage door, but there's a garage, single car garage door on each side of it. Another French looking house.
You can drive along Donald Ross Drive and see at least a dozen houses with roof lines that are similar to this. Well, are there any further questions of the witness? We've sort of slid over into discussion, but let's not complete that until we've asked all our questions of the witness. Hearing none, thank you very much. Discussion.
Mr. Herring, can you speak into the mic again? I apologize.
Morning, Nessa. I would think it would be reasonable to include a stipulation that the applicant is willing to revisit the shutters so that they meet the suggestion of the guideline.
We can condition our approval on that if you would like to do so. And,
Add another one of those it's a should.
As the commission, you can place conditions if the applicant agrees with it.
That's not the question. I understand. We can place any conditions.
But it is a should versus a must. It is a should or a recommendation that,
Recommendation, so it's not a requirement. And and I think the discussion we've had on those before, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me please if I am, is that the decisions for which we need to use to make the COA decision on has to be the must. It cannot be the shoulds or we would like to seize or those other things. And tell me if I'm miscuing that, I would be glad.
Not sure that it's as black and white as that, because my understanding is that not only do we have to consider whether, to the extent to which the proposal is within our guidelines, we also have to consider whether it's congruous with the historic district. And even theoretically, even a whole bunch of small departures from should criteria could theoretically lead us to the conclusion that the particular project is not congruous.
And I don't disagree with that, but I think one or two of them probably would not be sufficient to disapprove a COA, or not approve it, I guess is the right wording, but to do that. So I caution people to be careful of what, I mean, and there's no problem with questioning those things. I have no issue with any questions. The question is what we use for facts in making our determination for approving the COA.
I would be of the same view that a single should, or maybe two shoulds, is probably not grounds. But if you had 15 shoulds, then you could say in aggregate, we have sufficient concern that we don't want to approve this at this, or we want to defer it at least.
But if we're going to use those, then we need to include those in the decision and state that there were, 15 shoulds or kind of would ought to like to seize in there, and therefore the conglomeration of them brings us to the.
Given that the applicant is willing to consider that, would that have any effect on the crafting of the motion?
He can consider, the applicant consider whatever the applicant would like to consider. I'm not directing any of this to the applicant. I'm just directing this to our business of approving or disapproving a COA has to be made on, in other words, we specifically, for example, the reverse of it, if there's a must in there that says, I must paint this house white, then if we go to approve it, we have to state that exception. If it's a should, it's not part of the decision in the first place unless we meet the conglomerate point of view. I think that's a very valid point. If you had a gaggle of them that were shoulds, you may be overwhelming in the congruous issue. But so that's the difference is a question of what we can use for facts.
I think we had this in the case of the house on Midland Road some months ago, back 2 or 3 times,
You mean Medlin Road?
in terms of disapproving over shoulds.
74
or
Midland.
Deferring over shoulds, 74, right.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
There's also an open question about the true or simulated light windows. I'm just raising it because I think Peter had it in the report that it wasn't mentioned, so.
When asked
Well,
about it.
that is a good question. I guess, thank you for bringing it up, and I'm not trying to jump on your.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Those are single pane windows, or are those going to be paned divided windows, I guess?
The windows are casements.
So they are single pane.
They're double pane windows.
Right, but they're not,
Single frame.
Yeah, they're single frame, but they're casements where they open out.
right.
They will
They're
not be
single frame.
divided, the panes will not be divided.
There's no mullins or anything into.
No, there's no grills,
No
no
grills.
molds, yeah.
Well,
no
whatever you
grills.
wanna call
Yeah,
them.
it's clear glass.
Clear glass, okay.
Clear
That was
glass.
my question, because you don't see that too often, but.
Sort of a modern take, yeah.
Any other questions?
I think overall, don't we have to consider the neighborhood? We've talked about that before. This is a new home in a new area. There's other new homes in the area. There are no historic buildings in that area. So there's no cutesy craftsmanship or charming homes in that area. This is a different type of project, and it just happens to be within the historic district. So I think that's a different consideration that we need to be aware of. While we do have to follow the guidelines, it's a different situation than we're talking about when people take a lot within on Orange or wherever, where there are historic buildings built in 1916 and 1905. That's a different consideration. That's all my point.
And I think you have to be careful of that, because you can, in the decisions, you cannot take into account communities.
Right.
It's congruent with the historic district
In total.
in total. You cannot subdivide the district when making a decision on that. It has to be the whole district. I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree with your logic. I'm just saying that based on that appellate court decision, it was very clear that their decision was based on the district, not because what they ruled on was people were saying exactly what you did. This is a separate district. It looks different than anything else. It's a neighborhood.
Right.
And the appellate division come back and said no, and the statute is very clear at the very front of the statute for the Historical Commission that it be congruent with the district. And the court upheld that.
And I believe counsel to the village council has also informed them that it is his view that the concept of neighborhood doesn't really apply. It's one district.
And we went through a whole lot of, when we went through the rewrites, a whole lot of taking neighborhood out of that, what we had before, because of that very issue. So if you can find it somewhere else in the district, or anything related to it, then you got to be careful of disapproving it because it doesn't look like the community or the neighborhood.
So, may I add? So, given that background, so the roof line, you're all telling me there is something comparable in the historic district to that?
Yes.
The picture that was put up of the home,
Yeah,
I
what
would
was
argue,
that? I
that
mean-
that was a fairly simple roof line relative to this one, but there are examples.
Well, that's a simpler roof line. Yeah.
One of the reasons that I do my windshield inspection of these properties as I go by. Obviously, this one you can't do the windshield inspection of, but you can look around and, as I said, drive on Donald Ross Drive, and you will see many roof lines. Not as attractive, I think, as this one necessarily, but certainly equally complex and steep and so forth and so on. So I don't want to influence anybody just because of what I think, but my own personal view is that this design is congruent with the historic
Is it
district.
appropriate for me to ask that, being new again, maybe this is way crazy, but the burden should be on the applicant to show that it's congruous, right? So I'm just wondering, is it possible, I mean, not in this case necessarily, but going forward, that there be some photos that show, hey, look, this roof line exists. Here's a couple photos. Is that too burdensome? Or?
That could be a subject of discussion in terms of improving our procedures and perhaps even the guidelines.
We may not get to it today, but I actually, not with regard to the approval of this COA, but more generally, I want to actually talk about something very related to that.
Oh, good.
And a lot of detailed applications will cover that, where they will pick and choose from several other projects and say, we're modeling it off this,
Across the street. Or
Yep,
here, yes,
so,
right.
and this is new construction, so it's not a dig at this application, but that's a good point. So, if everyone's ready, I'd be willing to make a motion.
Please do.
Just as a caveat, I'm not comfortable limiting the width of shutters. I think the builder is best and the homeowners are best positioned to make that call on site as far as final width and dimension based on the aesthetics of the project. Motion that we'd be making is based on the material that we've received today and what we've reviewed. Upon due consideration of the application package submitted and the testimony given, the Historic Preservation Commission concludes the following: that the project as proposed is not in conformity with the guidelines insofar as the use of vinyl windows. Nevertheless, the applicant has satisfied the burden of persuasion, and the project, subject to any conditions imposed by the commission, is deemed congruous with the Pinehurst Historic District.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? Ready for a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
brought up a point about vinyl shutters, and I think you addressed that you were not going to, oh, the vinyl, the fact that the shutters
These are vinyl. There you go.
So we might have to address that.
Just amend your motion to say I also include vinyl shutters.
I amend the motion to also include vinyl shutters.
I approve, I second that.
The seconder accepts the
I
amendment?
seconded,
All right.
re-seconded.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? 7-0. You have your certificate of appropriateness. Thank you for your testimony.
Yes.
Congratulations. Good looking home.
Eric, if you would close the public hearing and open the regular meeting.
I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes.
All right, so minor work, does anybody have any questions about what was approved by staff for minor work? We had a roof/porch repair at Cameron & Co., repair of dormer molding and base siding at 90 Village Green, re-roof at 270 Magnolia, which is the CenturyLink building, so that was a pretty easy approval. 83 Short was shutters, 75 Midland was re-roof, 35 Orange was re-roof, restoration of windows and new gutters, we talked about that earlier, and then 15 Azalea is a re-roof and skylight repair. 15 Azalea is the Women's Exchange.
I have no questions. Comments or otherwise.
All right, since I have all you here, I just want to get some guidance from you on how you'd like to progress with guideline changes real quick. Do you guys want us to go through the same process we did last time where I present a few to you and you make the decision? Do you guys have suggestions that you'd like for me to present in that package? I just want to make sure that it's a,
I think it should go it could go either way.
it doesn't
We
matter
have-
to me.
Yeah, well, we can have our own recommendations. I mean, that technically is our job.
Mm-hmm.
And if the staff, I have no issue, and but other people can speak for themselves, but if you think you have a recommendation, I would be interested in hearing it.
Alex and I went through the book about a week and a half ago, and we have a few.
Okay, write them up and
Okay.
let's get them in front of us so we can look at them before the meeting that we got to discuss them in. I would
Okay.
just not do.
Would you guys be interested in a work session separate from a meeting, or would you like to tag it on the back of a meeting?
You
gotta speak into the
Speak into
mic.
the mic.
Steve,
Yeah.
I can't get this straight. To be a fellow newbie, I haven't spent a lot of time in the guidelines. I'm beginning to learn them, and I'm seeing a lot of things I'd like to at least discuss and understand how they came about, whether they're important or not, whether they can be tweaked or not. Not having been through I'm sure a lot of pain to get where we are today for a great set of guidelines, I'm probably rocking the boat, but how do I do that? How do I
You
make?
talk to Eric and me, you do what you're doing right now.
Doing
Yeah,
what you're doing right now is the right answer, I think. That's
yeah.
what
If
we're
there's
doing.
something that you want to, if there's something that's just in the back of your mind that you need to address right now, let's just go ahead and open it up.
I have a few small points in my short time in the guidelines already.
Uh-oh, 2 pages. Does anybody have dinner reservations?
What I think I would like to see, and it's not speaking for the whole group, is that we give them to Peter, let him write up a rough list of what it is that we're going to do, get that to us before we actually discuss what they are.
Yes.
So that if you ask, is blue shutters fine, I've got a chance to think about it, look at the guidelines, see what they really say, before I have to discuss them.
Does it sound like he's been a judge before? Just curious to anybody else.
So that would be, if you want, it's your call, Mr. Chair. I would,
My suggestion would be, let me ask Peter, if we allow the commissioners to noodle in their own brains and then make suggestions to you, how long would it be comfortable to allow us to do that?
It's up to you guys. Ideally, I'd like to try to do an update, if necessary, every 6 months or so, so that we're constantly making this a living document. Our last update was in December, I believe, and it was adopted in January, because remember, it has to go through you guys and then go through council, because you guys are just recommending
well, it has to go
approval.
through council and then through
Yeah,
village council. has
Village
the-
council,
is
you
the
guys are
authority.
commission, yeah. So they have the power to change it. You guys are just their advisory committee, But they do take your input and opinion very highly. That's why they put you on the commission.
Here's my suggestion, that if any of the commissioners have some proposals or some ideas or even some issues they'd like to have
Questions.
discussed, even if they don't have a particular proposal to change them, why don't you try to convey those to Peter within the next 2 weeks?
That's great.
And Peter, you can pull up everything together with your own ideas, and then the next question is whether we have a work session or whether we try to do this
It's up
after.
to you guys. I have no dog in this fight.
Given that
But-
we have 2 new commissioners, it might not hurt to have a work session where we can be open and spend a little bit of time asking questions. And the reason I say that is a new set of eyes and ears are always something very good to listen to, because they're looking things with a fresh view versus some of us that are getting a little, yeah, long, thank you, long in the tooth of having been on the commission. Sometimes I know I get blinded. Well, I think I know the answer, and then all of a sudden, somebody comes along and asks me a question like, oops, maybe I don't know as much as I should.
Now, my only concern, or not concern, I've at least set these dates out in my calendar in advance, and I think it would be easier to do on the back end of
Oh, that's
whatever
fine. If
approvals
it-
we're doing.
Yeah.
Because then all of us are already kind of circling around those dates.
When we do the work session, I mean, we can do it before, after, in between, another day. I'm not making that, but I would think it would be nice to just do it. It has to be a public meeting anyway, because we're all in the room together, so we can tag it onto the end of one if we want to stay late, come in early, if we want to do it early.
Well, gentlemen and lady, I think it depends on how much the agenda is, where we would do that.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
it
the
depends.
issue.
If you got a lot of items, then you might have to have a separate session. If it's a small number, we can do it at the back end of a meeting. I don't think we need to make that decision today.
No, I'm not saying we do.
We can make that decision is on July 2nd. I can let you guys know how many cases we have and how contentious they may or may not be.
Right.
And then you guys can let me know if you want to tack it on, or if you guys want to come in early, or we do it on a separate day. I can just communicate on July 2nd.
We have a hard deadline for submitting stuff to you, Peter? Is that okay?
You guys? Never,
Never?
never.
No, on this, though, you don't.
This round, I think
On
Eric
this
asked for
one,
2 weeks.
2 weeks would be, quick math, July 10th?
July 10th, we have to submit stuff
Richard,
to
is
you,
this
right?
yours?
Yeah, that would give me enough time to format it and get into something that's a usable document.
Additional. Oh, okay. in case
But we can
you
do,
have it. All right.
we can do them anytime we want. We can do them one at a time, we can do 15 of them at a time, we can do them. The thing that we got into before that was a problem is they were never done, and then all of a sudden you had a whole rewrite because it became, nobody had ever kept them up to speed.
And does this just relate to the guidelines themselves or to the procedure, the application? Because like the question I raised about the burden, it seems to me the applicant should have the burden, and I'm,
They do?
I think that making that part of the required documents, saying, give examples of where this is in the district would help them get a faster approval. It'd behoove them to do it, because if in your packet you have 10 examples of a roof line that looks just like what's before you, you no longer have no concern. It would
helps
still be
you.
in my staff report. It definitely would help me, but, I get paid to do work, so I'm okay with doing a little bit of work. But, it's to their benefit as well. Anything that makes this process easier on the back end is far, far nicer, because I'd much rather have them come here and get approved than be like, now I have to wait 30 days and bring this additional material because I wasn't able to prove the burden of, proof. And that's definitely something that I think that is a welcome change potentially. I mean, you explain it to council saying, it's burden of proof. They've got to prove it. And right now they're submitting stuff that's definitely congruous, but we'd like to see them prove that it's congruous. And that's the whole point of the testimony and materials, is they're testifying to what they're submitting, but now they're also providing additional information saying, yep, what I'm doing is congruous and you can't say no.
I think we are in a perfect position right now to really make some improvements over a very good basic product. The guidelines that I didn't contribute very much to, so I can say in all modesty, is a very fine document. But it obviously can be improved, And we have a combination now in the commission of some people who've been around the commission for quite a long time, and two sets of new eyes with their own experiences and backgrounds and so forth. So I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to do this. So,
All right.
Right on.
We'll kick into the next one. So one of the changes that came up this month for me was the roof line change. I'm thinking about it, Alex is thinking about it, Darren's thinking about it, but if you guys could also throw your 7 heads into the idea, what's a objective standard that we can implement? Because we had a gentleman come here before us for 6 inches to raise a very small part of his roof. Is that something that you guys would trust staff to be able to do? You know, or is there a way to write the guideline to where, you know, there's some flexibility there?
That to me kind of gets into, okay, you can approve anything less than 6 inches, or less than 10 inches, or
It's
less
just,
than
it's just an
a foot and a
idea.
half. I
You
know
know,
that's
I know it's
would be my
arbit-
question.
I know it's arbitrary, but at the same time, like, you have to admit that coming before you for that was,
It's not that burdensome, I don't think, to us to do it. I mean, it's not like I'm looking to slow anybody down either, but I don't know how you would define something like that. Well, you can do
well, the
it.
other side of the coin is, if we write a regulation or guideline that's too loosey-goosey, it puts a greater burden on Peter, because then he's got to exercise judgment that now we have to exercise, and there's 7 of us to take the blame, and there's only 1 of him. So, it's
just an idea. You
Okay.
know, if you guys come back and say, no, we want to leave it, we'll drop it, that's fine. I just want to make sure that anytime I bring you guys a case, that I've been thoughtful about it and that it meets it, right?
Personally, I've seen no problem with the cases
Okay.
you've brought in. I see none of them that I would consider,
Okay. I just want to
Minor.
make sure that we're,
Today's was the exception. That case should not have, that case should have come in a much more complicated fashion with 15 other things happening on that
well,
property.
Yeah.
that was his choice in an
I know,
extent.
but, so I would say that's an anomaly, because most people are gonna spend the money and
to do it twice or 3 times.
if we get one of those a year, I mean, you know, I don't see a big issue in influence of a mechanism.
I mean, how long did we spend on that case?
10 minutes,
Put
maybe.
10 minutes at the outside?
But by the same token, I think, I would doubt that any of the 7 people reading it thought there was going to be an issue.
That's what I
thought it
mean.
was pretty much a no-brainer.
That's the other issue is
But
that,
those are
How to define
decisions we
that.
get to make.
yeah.
Those are decisions we get to make. And the burden shouldn't necessarily be put on staff to decide. I mean, they get enough. I mean, there's a fine line between all of these, and I don't think you can regulate yourself down to such detail that you're going to do away with you having to make judgment calls.
And why would you want to, Tom?
Yeah,
Why would you want to?
You would?
You
I agree.
wouldn't, so.
It'd be silly. Yeah.
Exactly.
We do regulate the thickness of trees. I'm just putting it out there.
That one's already covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was-
Get me back for Savile Road.
Could save Peter a half-inch report, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
And then lastly, training. Eric wants to, you know, start some training. I was just curious what you guys would want that to be on. I'm guessing you guys, based on the previous discussion, would like that tacked on to an end of a meeting. It might be beneficial to do it before a meeting instead of at the end, so maybe come an hour early and do it before a meeting, just because that way we don't have the situation last time where, we necessarily didn't do something right there. So,
for the benefit of our new members.
yeah, and we could also, Kelly just told me that we have a great training budget to which we could provide food before, so that way, you know, exactly.
Sold.
Another no-brainer.
See, who knew you guys got a salary of free Jimmy John's?
There you go.
We have previously gone off to various garden spots in the state of North Carolina for live training on administrative procedures and so forth and so on, which I think may be more mileage than is necessary. I would just, but there's good training materials that are available that we can utilize here.
There's a whole book of about quasi-judicial hearings for which you can pull a lot of stuff out of in there.
And
That book is great. It's the best book I've read, and I went to college, and I wish I had that in college for my planning school. It would have saved me a lot of time.
Excellent, well-written from the School of Government.
But there's also training material
we-
like we did last time.
We have more copies of that, don't we? I think.
Kelly can get more.
Yeah,
if
we
you
get,
need
we
more.
don't, they had a bunch, and so they may have been gone, but we.
We hand them out to our BOA and you guys, when you guys onboard, but if anybody needs a copy, we can,
Get a hold of Kelly and she can.
We can
she
get another
get
one.
you one. It's only, it's about yay thick or so, I think.
I think it's like 100 and some pages.
Yeah, it's.
And it's an entertaining
Especially for
read.
the two of you that are new on quasi-judicial.
I think we got a copy.
Did you?
Both got
Okay.
it, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's well worth reading.
Is that appellate case in there, by the way?
It's a publication by the,
No, but is the appellate case you were referencing?
I can't remember that specifically, because if anybody wants any of those cases, I can look them up for you. I mean, they're right online from,
Another good resource is Coates Canon, yeah, our UNC School of Government, and I'll send you those links. We send those out anytime there's an update to something or something that affects you guys, but if you just want to be more educated on local government, UNC School of Government has a great listserv that's just phenomenal. Like, they have a specific clerks one, they have a historic one, they have a floodplain management one. They have things that are so detailed to just that if you want to learn more about anything about local government, it's there.
it's worth doing. I'm on that listserv, and you get all kinds of stuff, but most of it you can just delete if you don't.
I would recommend, though, if you get on that listserv, just wait a day. Tom will have a red light and copy for you and highlight everything and save you the time. So that's what I do. So just my advice on that.
My hobbies.
I appreciate it. It really does save me a lot of time. I'm just, highlight. Okay, what do we say? All right, so training, yes. Post-COVID, or whenever this changes, maybe we'll be able to bring somebody in and have a fun training and bring North Carolina Preservation in. I'll keep you updated on that, but I don't know how feasible that is in 2020. Maybe a 2021 endeavor. But for the next one, we'll plan on doing what we did last time then, is what I'm hearing, that we'd
Got some of those videos?
we'll play I think last time we did making quasi-judicial decisions, right? And then maybe we'll do a procedure one on how to hold a hearing and stuff like that and ask questions on that way. Since we're implementing some new procedures with Eric's modifications, that would be a good training maybe. All right?
Might have some discussion about the interrelationship or lack thereof of what we do and the National Park Services.
Yeah,
Historic
MPS and SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office, and how we operate within them. Yeah, we can definitely talk about that. There's a great article in Coates Canon that I'll find and send it to you that it does a pretty good job of explaining that.
Before we wrap up, David, welcome, glad you're here,
Thank you.
and same as you.
Well, thank you.
Eric, your first one to share, I thought you did an awesome job.
Yes, very nice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't think I screwed up anything too badly, and a couple of times I stumbled, Tom fixed me up, so, yeah, we're all good.
That's,
And just
I
to
thought
make
you did a
sure,
wonderful job.
Tom is our vice chair still, apparently. I was instructed of that. That just carries on because his term did not end, so he's our vice chair, so he's second in command. If Eric decides not to show up, he'll chair the meeting. And if after that, if both of them don't show up, I don't like any of you. Don't leave me like that. I'm just messing with you. It's not that
I will
hard.
entertain a motion to
Eric,
adjourn.
I had one other topic I wanted to at least put out, and we can spend 2 minutes on it or more if people want to. And Peter, you or anyone else on the committee, how many houses are there in the historic district?
I don't know.
Or 700 would be a guess.
I would guess over that.
Swag, yeah.
I can get that information very easily.
Here's
A
the
list
point.
of them.
There
I don't
is
know if
somewhere.
it's a
Well,
100%
there,
complete.
yeah, but, so there's new construction, so there's
It may
houses
not
that have
be
been
100%
outed.
accurate.
And then you're talking about residential structures, but you might also want to know how many commercial structures there are, how many
Yeah, you're
mixed-use structures there are, get it broken down like that. We can definitely do that.
But here's my point. There was a lot made with respect to the last application about the roof line. Now, if I owned one of the adjacent properties, forget whether I like that house or not, I wouldn't be opposed to it being built. It's a lovely house. Let's say there's 600 houses, just to use a number. And
Make the math
suppose,
easy.
having, to Ann's point, they had done the, so were there 10 others that have roof lines just like this? Well, that's 10 out of 600. Does that make it congruous? Or are the 10 that are like that, are they incongruous with the other 590 that are not like that? And my-
That's the question, that's $1 million question that's
Well,
been
but
asked here before.
My point is, we haven't, in my now going on 3 years, disapproved anything. And if we continue to improve, to approve things, pretty soon the standards will largely be academic, because it will be anything goes. And I'm not arguing that we should become tough guys and start saying no all the time. I think back to 74 Midland Road, it was, even in the description, it was a combination of the 7 approved architectural styles. But the result of that, to me, was it was nothing. Or maybe it was nautical, and it would have looked great on Martha's Vineyard, but it's not kind of what we were attempting to do.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And I think it does circle around how you define congruous. And
would be
it
a good
shouldn't
one
be
to
a
have.
strict percentage test.
That would be a great one to have, probably a single training on its own, is defining congruous and what it really means, would be a good, some
Otherwise,
time.
there
to-
would be no standards. Anything would be
Well-
approvable because there are 2 that look like mine out of 700 or whatever, so I get to do it.
But you got to be careful, and I would only offer a caution to that. Each case is, in a legal case, is based on its own merits, not in a comparison to the other cases that may or may not have been similar to it. So that's not strictly adherent here, but it's something you have to be careful. You can't be drawing in and saying, well, there's only 10 out of 600, so therefore it's not congruent.
Right, I don't know where I would draw the line anyway.
Yeah,
If
and
10
I don't
isn't
think
enough,
you,
it's
I would be
20.
very cautious about drawing a line, is my point as well. You can, if there's 3 other ones, then it may still be congruent. And if there's 100 others, it may not be congruent. And that you can't base it on, I think we ought to be careful trying to base it on some kind of mathematical formula to say that there's a minimum number. I think you have to,
I use that as a first cut, but
Right.
it's not determinative, and I don't think anyone could come up with a number that is the right
I
number.
don't think so either.
But,
It is.
but if you have if everything is approvable, then there is no standard.
Well,
You're absolutely right.
well,
And
yes
I
and
don't
no,
think
and I
that's
would
right.
hope that we have some impact on exactly what you're talking about by what we are doing here every time we meet. It's not like if we keep doing this, you're going to not have something in 20 years. You will, because you still have the standards, and unless the standards are changed, you meet those standards. And that's really what the statute talks about. We are only allowed to make decisions based on those standards.
Right.
We have no leeway other than that, and it's statutory that defined that way.
No, I understand. If we reject something, there is a process of appeal for the applicant that
There's a
goes
process
outside
of
us.
appeal, there's a process of what, we can only take facts into consideration, so you can argue it.
There's something between approving and denying, though, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
defer.
Duration.
Say to an applicant, please go back and.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, I think
Typically, we offer them that to continue the
You're right.
Technically, they
meeting.
could appeal that, though, too.
They can?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think we all know that the historic district is a relatively new thing, and there were homes built before the historic guidelines were there. There's concrete block houses within the historic district. Now, is that congruent? I don't think so.
Right.
But would somebody come and ask to build one of those? What do?
You have to take,
You know, to take your point to the extreme.
Right.
So,
you have to take each case on the facts that are presented,
right.
not on what could happen, might happen, should have happened.
I
It's
agree.
based solely on facts, and that is very statutory. That's not a leeway for which we can
Yeah,
deviate.
just because it's in there doesn't mean that you can
That it
approve
is
it.
or that it isn't.
Isn't, right.
Then maybe as part of our discussion of the guidelines, could someone who was in on the process explain where you came up with the must shall versus should?
Can tell you what the thought process was when it was made. I was in on the last year or so of it. That's all I can tell you is what was discussed a summary of what was discussed at those meetings. And there was a lot of discussion about the shalls, must, and such. And I'll tell you what was determined by that, my summary of what was determined by that group. I'd be glad to do that at some point in time. Or I'd be glad to do it over a cup of coffee with just any one of you.
You need a motion to move out of here?
Yeah.
So,
I will entertain a
Martini
motion to
time.
adjourn.
Harry's hungry.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Peter and Kelly?